welcome. Welcome back. Marlon Speaks Live, man. Turn this off. My bad. Feedback from another feed. Yeah, welcome back. As y'all can see, I got, what's her name? I don't think I remember her name, but I had her on another video from last night. And like I said last night, I was going to watch some more of her content before I subscribed to her. And now, she got some powerful content. Yeah, this lady, she really tapped into her purpose. So I wanted to share some of what this lady shared with her audience, with y'all, because this insight, a lot of what I'm trying to share is insight. This lady, if she was born into a hate group, imagine being born into a hate. I can't imagine being born into a hate group. I can't imagine, like, my whole life, my earliest memory is just nothing but love. My earliest memory is my dog. I had a German Shepherd mixed with a child. His name was Champ. So my earliest memory is being with my dog and being with my big brother. My big brother showing me stuff. We learning how to tie our shoes, ride our bikes, and out meeting friends and just different people through the neighborhood in Beecher and just having fun. And our little brothers came along. Now we got two little more brothers. He got three brothers all together. I got two little brothers, and we showing them the ropes, and just love all my cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and just normal life. I couldn't imagine being born and raised with hate. But we are, we get grown, we start working and meeting people that we never knew growing up in our neighborhoods, and we start seeing these and feeling these just different energy, from people. And it's like, man, hold up. These people weren't raised like me. Like, these people something must have happened, and it's always, my experience is always majority white people, and it's like, oh, wow. Now, I interacted with some white people in high school. I went to a skill center, and I noticed it then. We were still kids, but we was, older kids. So we could, you kind of get a good idea of where somebody at 16, 17 years old. You kind of get a good vibe. Okay, they had 14 other years before you ever met them, 15, 16 other years before you ever met them. And then it's like, okay, wow, you got a different background than me. But when you're grown, you really can see the extent. You can really feel the extent of someone's, like their background being so much different from yours. And all I could say is I just couldn't imagine being born into a hate group like this lady was. Man, and I'm assuming this is fairly common, and that's why I think she felt compelled to share her story, because, like, in our community, the Black community here in America, majority of the people I know was raised like me, none but love. They don't know no hate. They really don't, truly don't. Like, contrary to what a lot of white people today think, our parents didn't raise us to hate white people, even though with all the history of hate towards our people, we just wasn't raised to hate. No, white. I wasn't. Anyway, I wasn't raised. I don't know of no Black people that was raised, we're going to hate them. Now, mind you, I will say this. Growing up, it was a lot of criminals that preyed on white people. They go stealing their bikes. It was nothing serious. It's like petty crime. It wasn't nothing serious. It wasn't nothing to where they just finna go hunt white people, go kill them, go lynch them. You know what I mean? Just a lot of my guys I grew up with, they might have was struggling a little bit. Their parents might not have had the best jobs like my parents did, and or might have just didn't do for them like my parents did. So, they may have felt compelled to steal. So a lot of, I ain't gonna say a lot, but a few people I grew up with, they would, the white neighborhood, the so quote unquote white neighborhood, white part of our neighborhood was real close. So they had, it felt like, okay, I'm finna ride my bike over there and steal. I never did it personally. Me and my brothers and my friends I hung out with never did it. But we had some older dudes during that time that would literally prey on, go steal some bikes. That was basically the extent of stealing bikes. So other than that, none major. We didn't have too many white people in our schools when I was growing up, but the few that was left, I ain't gonna lie, if they got on the bad side of a bully or something, or a group of bullies, they would harass them. That happened, just like what Eminem went through. That happened in my school district, at my school at that time. That was fairly common. If, white people, because we was hearing the stories of abuse our ancestors took not too much long before that. So growing up, the few handful of white people that was in our school, if they got out of line with certain bullies, they would get on them, and that was fairly common. But I can't say that it was just straight hate. You know what I'm saying? Just straight hate. It's basically kids just being kids. It's everybody fought everybody. Growing up in my neighborhood, everybody. So it wasn't nothing directed towards white people. But this kind of hate that I'm assuming this lady talking about is deep. So y'all tap in with this lady. I added the original link to the video in the description, so y'all can listen to it in full and maybe subscribe to her content. But so we're gonna go there.
Hi guys, my name is Jenny, and I spent my entire life in Christian nationalism, white supremacy, anything that you can imagine about alt-right Mormon communities that are prepping and fighting against the evils of the world. I was a trad wife for 24 years, and I just left all of this behind. I left the Mormon Church in 2018, and I left MAGA just about 2 years ago. And today I want to dive into all of the many questions that I'm getting around white supremacy, what that looked like from the inside out, my rationalization and justification for it. And I do want to give a little warning at the beginning of this video that I think that some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be really hard to hear. And I want you to know that they are just as hard for me to talk about as they will be for you to listen to. So let's just dive right in. I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take 2.
You're not going to believe what happened. Tell me everything. I'll show you on Monday.com. So I started the biggest initiative.
What we've done here is establish a place where we have control over who our neighbors are, and that is just for the sake of preserving, our culture.
And that culture, effectively, we're saying this is a white culture, a whites-only place.
White American culture.
Over the last year and a half, high up in the Ozark Hills in the state of Arkansas, dozens of people have been working hard, leveling the land, building houses. They call it an intentional community based around shared ancestry, a long-winded way of saying something really quite simple.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land.
I seen this video, and I'm gonna say this: all white communities. That's basically what this country was based on, trying to create an all white type of place where white people can gather and and just do white stuff. I guess I don't know, but as y'all know, if y'all been following any of my videos, then y'all know that the fact that everybody came from Africa. And the fact that this generation is the first to know that's kind of like why I feel like we're getting a whole lot of backlash, a whole lot of people like these people in this TikTok video, that with the facts being right in their face, they still want to hold on to what they think of as a white utopia. You know what I'm saying? When really, yeah, go over there and create your, non-melanated, no melanin community. You still black. So that's the whole thing. Everybody black. No matter how you slice it, all of y'all, everybody, even within the Mormon, white supremacy, nationalists, you wouldn't have life without black people. So I don't even see the point of creating a so-called white utopia. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause we all black. You might as well embrace everybody because we all us. Everybody is us. It's pointless. I don't get it.
And they invited me in, a seemingly bucolic and sometimes surreal experience. But this is built on a radical modern premise, made possible because of a new political and technological moment, one with strong ties to the most active far-right groups in the US. Instead of taking to the streets, they are building their own for generations to come.
It's important for me to do this for my ancestors, my friends, my family, my children, my children's children.
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I have a ton of people sending me this video this week and asking me what I think about it. And I love that this video exists because I want you to imagine now 200 years down the line that this all-white community has, built in isolation there in the middle of the Ozarks or the Appalachians, wherever they are in Arkansas. And now their descendants 200 years from now, what are they going to look like? That's me. The Mormons did that 200 years ago. They left civilization. They took their little white European, Scandinavian, British, English, German selves out to Salt Lake City, and they taught their whites only stuff for 200 years. And I'm the result of that. My kids are 7th generation. I was 5th generation. And we are the result of the OG white supremacist cult in America, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Mm-hmm.
And people have asked, would you have moved to a community like that 7 years ago?
Wow.
I did. That was my life. I picked the whitest country club neighborhood, and that's where I lived. All of my friends were white. All of my friends were Mormon. And then when I left the Mormon church, all of my friends were still white, and they were all Christian.
Warning. Don't believe the AI trading hype until you watch this entire video. Hi, I'm Lane Mendelsohn.
I gotta get on
I
to
just
it.
started talking about white supremacy on my YouTube channel here a couple of weeks ago. And I think that most people are picturing those neo-Nazi groups. They're picturing the skinheads. They're picturing the Klan. They're picturing all of that stuff. But what they don't realize is that there are white supremacists here in America today, and a lot of them, so many of them, that are packaged in Jesus and packaged in church, and they wear little crosses and they look really sweet, and they're absolutely not. I want to share with you what that white supremacy felt like from the inside out. Now, a lot of my videos are carefully scripted. I have tons of scriptures and cross references and all kinds of other videos and stuff. I have 15 minutes before I have to go get in the shower and get ready for work. I'm in my pajamas and I haven't even had a makeup or eaten breakfast. So I don't have time to script today. We're just going to plow through this. And I think that it's more important to share what I learned and what my personal experience is than to cross-reference all of the scriptures and the doctrines and everything that everybody said. So first of all, that viewpoint of born and raised multi-generational, I was the product of a community that this was their ideology since the beginning. And I was the child of multi-generational family. So every one of my aunts and uncles and my cousins and my mom and my grandparents and everybody, this was their absolute reality too. Okay, so here's what I believed about race. You have to go way back to the past life, which Mormons call the pre-existence. If you just Google Mormon pre-existence, and you can read all about that. I believed that I was literally birthed by one of the heavenly mothers and heavenly father, Elohim God, and that we lived in a life before we gained earth bodies where we could make choices and we had our personalities and our passions. Like the person that I am today, that's who I was in this past life. And all of God's spirit children were being born into this past life until he had amassed, billions and billions of people. And at that point, God, who was white, the heavenly mothers who were white, they called together all of his spirit children in what's called the council in heaven. And in this council in heaven, God told us that he wanted us to become a God like himself. And in order to do so, we'd have to come to earth, gain physical bodies. And if we passed the test, that we could come back to him and be gods and goddesses just like him and his heavenly wives. So God presents this plan for us to become like him. And his two sons volunteered to play a really pivotal role of savior. God wanted us to have free choice, and to do so, he'd have to have a sacrifice in the form of one of his children giving up their lives and also being that exemplar for everybody. So Jesus came forward, and Lucifer, who would later become Satan, and they had opposing views. All of us spirit children chose sides. 2/3 of us went with Jesus, and 1/3 of God's children went with Satan. Well, they lost the war, so they were cast out. They never see bodies. They can never become gods. And they are now these satanic forces that rule over the world, led by Satan. But of those 2/3, there were part of them that were kind of apathetic, kind of fence sitters was a word that one of the Mormon prophets used to describe them. And another phrase that the Mormon prophets used to describe these people who, like, they got to stay in heaven, they got to come down to earth, and they hadn't quite followed Satan, but they weren't the best.
I'm gonna stop it here, man. Like, that's why I personally don't follow religious doctrine. Even when I was younger, I just remember being in church and looking around and, like, just having a broad perspective on everything, on life, right? Even as a kid, and just like tallying everything up. Like, you know what? It don't feel right. Like, I don't know. Like, I think we have the power to get books written about us. I don't think we all need to be just focused on this one book. I just personally never felt that. But as I got older, I started realizing, church religion in this country is like it's a business. So I get that. I don't knock nobody hustle. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it just seemed like it's a hustle. But as I matured, I said, you know what? A lot of people really believe this stuff, and that's when I started to, like, learn about genetics, learn about our true, like, where humans originally originated from, like, and not just humans. Like, how did the earth develop? How did, science facts, right? Stuff that wasn't available when they wrote the books of the Bible, the Quran. They had to come up with something back then because, everybody want to know. We are intelligent beings. Everybody intelligent. We want to know where we come from. It's like we look up in the stars. We on this earth for all these thousands of years, and we contemplate. We literally dream, and we literally try to. What's so funny, Pumpkin? Yeah, because I'm just sharing my experience, bro. Ain't nothing funny. You know what I'm saying? I wanna share what this lady talking about more so, but religious fanatics, man, they will go to the extreme to defend their religion. And that's what's so scary about religion. People kill in the name of religion. You know what I mean? And I know for me, finding out, like, the truth of where humans evolved from, it really liberated me. And it's like it's nothing to fight about when you know the truth. It's nothing to fight about and defend. It's just a fact. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing that scared me about religion. You know what I'm saying? So let me continue with this lady.
Spirit children of God, the phrase that the Mormon prophets used for them is less valiant. They were less valiant in their past life. And so what happened to those people, according to what my church taught me, was they were cursed to be born to African families. And here's why being born to African families was such a curse. Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, Cain kills Abel. King is cursed with black skin. He's then removed from the garden.
And that's sad that they was fed them lies, not knowing that we the key to humanity. Like without dark skin, you wouldn't have white skin. You know, knowing that, you know, learning, hopefully for people like her, knowing the truth about who we are, and I always say this, will help them learn the truth about who they are. You know, the finger pointing at us all these generations here in this country, we cursed because we got dark skin. Now they can find out the truth that actually without us, we're the key. We're the key to humanity, being what humanity is. Wouldn't have life without this melanin. Wouldn't have life, wouldn't have no way to even have a white culture without black people. Because at one point, everybody on this earth was black. So that's crazy that they teach this ideology to hate where they come from. And that's deep.
Garden of Eden, which was in America, in Jackson County, Missouri. Adam on Diamond is the biblical Adamic language word that I was taught as a child. And so Cain was cast down to Africa, given black skin. All of his descendants were those less valiant spirits. So not only were they physically cursed, but they just weren't the best spirits to begin with. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, this is crazy, it absolutely is. And I don't know how very many adults who hear this convert to the Mormon church. I think it's really a tricky thing to sell these days. But again, that childhood indoctrination, I was born and raised into a community that taught this. And I've said in other videos that just as I was learning how to walk and talk and like zip up my own coats in the kindergarten coat closet, I was being taught you lived in heaven, have.
Yeah, she was being taught hate as she was learning how to tie her shoes. And wow, man, that is scary, you know, but I could feel it. Like I can feel the hate that parents put into their kids just being at Walmart, you know, looking at a little white kid. A lot of them, man, they look at you crazy. And I always say this, you know, like you could feel hate in children, you know, children especially can feel other hate from other children. You know, I remember being in class with certain people and not even know white people, just certain kids. And you could tell they was being raised differently than how I was being raised. You know, they was being raised to fight, being raised to come in school and raise all kind of hell. That's how they was being raised. So yeah, it's always the parenting. But when you in a community like the community she came from, the whole tribe is doing that. It's like, you know, it's a cult. It's a real life cult, like what she said.
Father, the war in heaven, they're cursed. They're sent down. Black people, they come from Africa. They were bad spirits. And then Cain was bad here on earth. So those are not good people, nor are the indigenous people of the United States, because the Book of Mormon, there was a good brother. There were two bad brothers. The bad brothers were cursed with brown skin. That's why the Indians have brown skin, because these are cursed people. And it would have been as difficult for me to unlearn that concept as it would have been to forget how to zip my coat in the kindergarten closet. Every cell in my body had accepted it as truth because I was taught it in scriptures, and scriptures don't lie. That's the truth. That's the most true thing in the world. Our prophets are charismatic leaders.
And that's the dangers of these books. You know, it really, really plant seeds, and especially kids, when they just believe because it's written down that it's facts, that it's truth. And that's what's so scary. Like what she said, she don't believe any adult could be fooled by this. But yeah, it's a whole lot of lost adults that was never fed nothing factual when they were young and looking for the next lie to be told. So it's a whole lot of grown folks that will follow anything, if it's written in the book. Look, nowadays it ain't even the book, it's the internet. You know what I'm saying? AI, you know, people believe any goddamn thing.
With their big, bright smiles, stood at the pulpits in our local congregations and sometimes speaking the whole world, talking about these truths. My parents, my family, my home reinforced it. The artwork, books that we had, music that was written just for children reinforced this. the whole community at large reinforced this truth. For me to think anything otherwise would have been like learning to walk sideways instead of forward. No, my knees bend. I'm supposed to go forward. I can't walk sideways. Black people are cursed. Native Americans are cursed. And this right here is why I think that it's more dangerous than joining like a neo-Nazi group, because I never had critical thinking to begin with. I didn't come from just a normal life. My whole life was this. There are two other really important ideologies that are kind of foundational to my white supremacy. One of them was the battle of good and evil that was constantly going on. And that battle of good and evil made me look at people who were suffering as people who God was punishing. So let me give you an example of this. I know I've shared it in another video that I was born in 1974. So I grew up with the Ethiopian famines. And I remember seeing them on the news and going to my grandma and saying, can we send some money? Like somebody had said, you can send money or something to help with food, put a check in the mail, do this. And my grandma saying, oh no, God has cursed them. We can't interfere with that. I viewed everything as,
You know, that gave me a lot of insight into when I see these Mormon dudes on these bikes riding around the hood. Yeah, that's the energy I always got from them. Like it's like they think their presence alone is helping to like take the curse off of black people. Like, bro, y'all the ones look crazy out here riding around on bikes. And you know what I'm saying? In the hood, you don't know nothing about these people. Don't know nothing about the inside of what black culture, no matter where they at. If they in gang infested Chicago or they in a nice close-knit community like Beach where I'm from. Know nothing. Know nothing about the inside of our culture, like how we feel about ourselves here. You know, individual thinking within our culture. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a whole lot of us that make up the black culture. It ain't just one mindset. You know, it's a whole lot of us, and collectively we make up the big black mindset. You know, so but I could tell you overall, none of us feel like we cursed at all. You know, the majority of us know who we are, but haven't tapped into it. And the ones that haven't tapped into it, they might be confused enough to join gangs and stuff like that. But it's somebody in their family that have taught them the truth about at least knowing the pride that we all have, the struggles that our ancestors have taken. And so no matter if they're a gang member with tattoos on their face, I guarantee you they had some type of semblance of a respectable upbringing, you know, some from somebody. So not only do we not feel like we're cursed, but the majority of us know that it's something in us that is so important to the human race because of all the effort that was taken to try to hurt our ancestors. We inherited that. We know that it's something within us that is so important because it was laws created around just our existence here in this country. So to have that kind of power is something special within us. So regardless of how the lifestyle many of us black people live, a different type of lifestyle, I think we all kind of know that, you know, at least know that about ourselves. So yeah, it's sad that these Mormon people, right, like I said, ride around on these bikes with them helmets on, really looking crazy to the majority. We look at them like, what is wrong with y'all? Y'all nuts.
the battle of good and evil. If you were being punished, then God was doing that to you, and it wasn't my place to interfere. And I would look around at all of the suffering in the world. So Africa and Mexico, you know, some of the Middle Eastern countries and stuff that were less developed in the 70s and 80s. And to me, that was just further proof. Oh, yeah, God is really giving those people their consequences for being evil people, for not being Mormon, for not being righteous, and for choosing evil and idolatrous ways. And then look at me and look at my community. We're so happy. We're so blessed. We have so much money. Never once did I think that's privilege or we have gotten here by stomping on everybody else. To me, my community was being blessed and their community was being cursed because they followed Satan and I followed Jesus. That battle of good and evil was almost like rooting for a sports team, and I had so much indifference to it. I'm rooting for Jesus, and Jesus is going to take really good care of me. They're all on Satan's side. Like, we already know who's going to win this Super Bowl. It's going to be Jesus. Another teaching that really shaped white supremacy and shaped me was that God reveals things to the righteous, that all light and truth comes from God, and that he will pour out his spirit, pour out revelations, pour out innovations and technology to those who are chosen. So I believed that the founding fathers had been inspired by Heavenly Father. I believed that Christopher Columbus had been led across the sea by Heavenly Father. Any discoveries were because those people were more righteous, because they were more chosen, and because God was revealing his eternal truths to them, whether it was the discovery of electricity or some vaccine. I believed that God revealed everything. It wasn't just man-made discovery. It was God revealing things. And here's how that shaped white supremacy for me. I did not believe that brown-skinned people who were cursed were capable of innovation, discovery, of doing anything great. This is really hard for me to say, but it's information that I think is really important for people to hear. That was just validated by watching the news and seeing that, like, white people like me, we were living in houses with electricity, and then over there in Ethiopia, it was a disaster. They didn't have any innovation. They had not had the technology that we had because they were cursed. And so God didn't reveal any of those truths to them. Funny story to go along with this very dark little topic here. I think I was in about middle school when we started learning about the Aztecs and the Mayans. And all of a sudden, I see these really advanced civilizations, and our teachers were showing pictures of people, in slideshows and textbooks and stuff that were brown skinned. And I really grappled with that. Like, that couldn't be the case. So I come to class one day and I raise my hand and I say, little known fact, but the Mayans and the Aztecs were actually white skinned. They weren't brown skinned, because in the Book of Mormon, everybody who came from Jerusalem was white until the good, righteous, holy brother, and then the two bad brothers got in a rift, and God cursed these two with the skin of blackness. That's the exact phrasage from the Book of Mormon. This guy's white and delightsome. These guys are cursed with the skin of blackness, that they will be loathsome unto him and his people.
So, the scariest part of this video is how, she explaining it so convincingly. So just think, she's not in that lifestyle no more, but just think somebody that's actively in that lifestyle right now, and how convinced they are of this. Like, they haven't came out of that rabbit hole yet. They still in there. So these people, and there's a lot of them, and they might not even been Mormon or raised exactly like her, but they have some semblance of the background that she had, right? Where they was fed false ideology about humans, about our evolution, about just how she even became to be how she is, who she is, where she originated from. So these Bibles, these books, and what's so sad about what she's saying is how much she was reinforced this false doctrine of who she was, and how the white superiority thing is actually Black people that believe in the same thing, and they believe that white superiority is real. So they believe what she believed, but they just happen to feel like they on the other end of it. So they feel they are Black and cursed. That's the part of what I see the most. I see a lot of Black people that think they are cursed. They don't realize that without them, that no other people would exist. And that is the most important thing that you can help somebody have, is life. So we are the key to all life. With that, I think that is the most, the best feeling that you can have within. And that's the thing that I'll be trying to share to a lot of my young Black brothers that don't understand how important they are. I'm trying to build them up from the inside out, because they've been fed so many lies about who they are in reference to everybody else. You know, a lot of people, man, we just N words. We just in, man. We supposed to do this. We supposed to be bad. We supposed to, you know, a lot of black people feel like they was born to be just cursed, you know, and that's the saddest part about what this lady's sharing. She's sharing it from the white supremacist perspective, but it's an actual black inferiority thing going on at the same time. And both of them people, I think, are the same. The white supremacist and the black person that think they're the worst. They are the same type of people. They're just on two opposite ends of the spectrum. So that's what I see the most of.
People. And then towards the end of the Book of Mormon, there's this huge battle, and the descendants of the brown guys, they kill all the white guys. So I had been taught from birth that the peoples of the Americas had originally been white. Through disobedience to God's plan, they had been cursed with brown skin. That's why, again, the Native Americans were brown skinned. So the only way that middle school me could reconcile these beautiful pyramids and the scientific discoveries and all the mathematics and everything of these ancient South American civilizations was to conclude that, oh, that must have been the Nephites. That was the white Indians that did all of that. The brown people were running around in the jungle eating raw meat. That's what my scriptures told me. The Book of Mormon taught me that the brown skinned people ended up being cannibals, and then they were forcing cannibalism on other people. There's this whole section in there where they kidnap all the women and children. They do horrible things to them, and then they force them to eat their own husbands and fathers. That's what I believed of the Indians.
Damn.
And that was the only reality that I knew. I don't remember what my middle school teacher said, but he did not agree with me. And again, when you think of white supremacists, you picture the neo-Nazis.
This lady says she was born in 1974, which makes her 51 years old right now. I was born in 77. I'm 48, so she's 3 years older than me. We was raised around the same exact time frame. And man, it's scary to think that, you know, this lady was raised with this type of mindset towards people that look like me, towards people, you know, Native American. I got a little Native American bloodline in me too. So, you know, generally my people. And I got a little white in me too. So I mean, I'm mixed with a lot of different stuff. Yeah, it's sad to think that somebody born and raised, you know, in my era was raised like this to basically like we cannibals, like we eat. And then you know what's so crazy? I was raised in and I remember certain stories in history in school where I read about certain times in American history that it was white cannibals. You know, they was and this was just general history. Like they was forced to survive and eat, you know, and you know, doing research about certain catastrophes, plane wrecks, and people basically starving and eating each other, you know, and it was never no racial thing. It was just like basically the worst possible scenario, you know. Even in Russia, I'm hearing stories from back in the day when they were forced to eat each other. So I don't know. And I heard some African people doing that too. I have heard that, you know. I guess it's just like human survival type stuff, you know, eating horses, you know, during the war. You know, the Nazis was eating their own horses, and they was eating each other too, you know, to survive. So I don't know. That's crazy, but to have it to where it's like that's indoctrinated into your, you know, how you look at the other race of people. That's scary, you know what I'm saying, for kids to be indoctrinated with that type of hate.
You pictured skinheads, whatever. The checker at Trader Joe's would have never thought Jenny's a white supremacist, but I would have left Trader Joe's. I would have driven home to my $1 million mansion. Again, I didn't have any black or Native American or Mexican friends because they're descended from Native Americans. But I did have housekeepers and landscapers and other servant type of staff that were brown skinned, and I was really nice to them. I was really kind to them, but I also felt like that's where they belonged. So when
Mm.
my crew of Mexican housekeepers was on their knees scrubbing my toilets in my $1 million house and my fancy gated community in Mesa, Arizona, with all the luxury vehicles parked in the garage, I very much felt like they were in their place. That was the place, not that I had put them in, but that's where God had put them. And that's where they would be until they accepted the Mormon gospel, came back to Jesus, and washed away their curse in the baptismal font. My church also taught me that once someone was baptized in the Mormon church, whether you're African or Mexican or Native American, that you would become white. And I think that if I was just doing the
Wow.
1-minute video on what white supremacy was from the inside out, it was that moment right there of I am the white person in the $1 million house with all the white kids and all the success and all this stuff, and you're scrubbing my toilets, and that's God's order. That is the working definition of white supremacy right there. I've had a few people ask me if I ever had any internal conflict over my white supremacist views, and yes, there's a couple I want to share with you. So during the Ethiopian famines, Where the World came out, and I was at a slumber party or something, and so they had the record. And I remember looking at that record case with all of these people of different colors and nationalities, and then listening to this song, and the song connected me emotionally to the suffering of the people in Ethiopia like it was intended to do. And I'm such a music girl anyway, and it like made me cry and it totally inspired me. And so that became a conflict for me. On the one hand, my grandma, Africa's a hot mess and we need to stay out of Africa. They're being cursed because they're bad people, they were bad spirits. But then on the other hand, this beautiful song that really spoke to my heart. I eventually saved up my babysitting money, bought myself a copy of the record that I kept in between my mattresses because seriously, if my mom had found it, she probably would have chucked it in the garbage. That love and compassion and true connection for the Ethiopians through music did cause a lot of internal conflict, and I did have to incorporate a lot of mental gymnastics. Another moment of huge internal conflict for me was a church shooting that happened in South Carolina in like 2015, 2016, while we were living in South Carolina. And my initial instinct was to go to our friends and neighbors who were all members of the KKK. And I do want to be really clear because I've talked about our friends who are KKK. My husband and I were invited to join, and I was never Klan. I was never, ever KKK. But I did definitely sympathize with them. The Klan hated Mormons too. If they'd been more Mormon friendly, I don't know, maybe we would have joined. But they also hated us and they wanted us to convert to being Baptist. So when that event happened, I went immediately to the store that was owned by my Klan, some leadership of the Klan, and I bought all the Dixie flags that I could. I flew them in my planters. I flew one. I had bumper stickers. We had Dixie flags everywhere to show our support of our culture. And this was the window of time when I took this little selfie of myself with the Dixie flag, and it's right next to my little cross necklace there. And that's what was going on over the next couple of weeks, just watching the news stories, because I'm not a psychopath. I started to see the faces of people who had been killed and really dig into the story behind everything. And it was clear that I was on the absolute wrong side. So I took down all the Dixie flags and took off my pin and my earrings and whatever else I had that I was using to identify myself as part of the resistance. Another time that I had a lot of internal conflict over my white supremacy was as a 20-something-year-old reading the book Roots. I read it while we were in Arkansas with not only Mormon family that was already racist, but then our Southern Mormon family who was like old school white supremacist, totally racist, and connecting to the story of chattel slavery for the first time ever in my life caused so much internal conflict. And I remember reading that book and just thinking, how could God want this to happen to anybody just because Cain in the Garden of Eden did this and whatever. Like, how could a God want anyone to go through this?
See, and that's my thing. Like, regardless, this lady, having this revelation, it don't seem to me like she really in tune with, the fact that she come from Black people and everybody that look like her do. So that, I think, would be the ultimate, revelation. That's why I said on one of these videos that I had her featured on, a lot of these so-called former MAGA, former Republican, former KKK, former, not a speaking against their old affiliation. I don't think a lot of them are sincere and or have truly like understand like the gravity of the fact that we are all one thing. We all come from Africa originally. And that right there is the thing that I don't think most of them ever will, even though they might have heard and seen the proof that they come from, that we all originate from that continent at that time, hundreds, thousands of years ago, how we all evolved into what all the so-called the races of people are. I think that fact is something that I don't think most of them will ever want to talk about. So
it's caused a lot of internal conflict for me. Then I fell in love with Oprah, and she was like such a guide to me, and she helped me understand my life and the world in so many different ways. But Oprah, one day, just a few years into her show, had a gay couple on, and I would boycott Oprah for the next like 5 years. I actually had like a little watchdog group of moms where we boycotted certain movies and music groups and things like that. And I even made like a little flyer on Canva. It was called Nopra, No Oprah, Nopra. And I had this feeling of, oh, I trusted Oprah, but no, she was evil. So, man, that battle of good and evil. I know I've mentioned in other videos that I did vote for Barack Obama privately. Nobody ever knew that I had done that. And
we
I
all
was
vote
a huge
privately.
Obama fan. I had to pretend like I wasn't on the outside. He was so inspiring. He had me from the Democratic National Convention. I was this alt-right.
That's what's going on too, man. Majority of these people that say they hate Barack, they secretly, man, like he probably was the best thing they ever seen in their life and probably will ever see at this point. That's crazy. That conflict. I mean, that internal conflict of hate, on the outside, but you love somebody on the inside. Man, that got to be real traumatizing. Like to be a grown ass adult and like can't share how you feel within, you sharing the exact opposite of how you feel. That got to be, man, that's crazy.
Mormon, Christian nationalist, white supremacist, and I voted for Barack Obama. But I justified that because he was half white. So I think that's about my limit for explaining white supremacy this morning. So let me segue into my journey out and a couple of really key moments for me. I left the Mormon church in 2018 and all of that collapsed, but I went back right into Christianity and still holding on to the white supremacy, the Christian nationalism, just believing that the Mormon church had been incorrect. I spent 4.5 years in Christianity. And I'm still hardcore MAGA. But then I was making lots of new friends, Mexican friends, African American friends, all kinds of people that just weren't white, and starting to see the world in a very different perspective. And I know that a lot of people have asked me what it was that catapulted me out of white supremacy. Well, first of all, having deconstructed the Book of Mormon and working with cult deprogrammers and deconstruction experts and therapists and just reading books and employing critical thinking for the first time, I then deconstructed the Bible and realized that I no longer see evidence for it or a God. And letting go of that and the Garden of Eden and all of the mythology and a vengeful God who wants to curse people, that opened up this space for change. So it was my religious deconstruction that led me to begin to deconstruct racism and white supremacy. But it was kind of an accidental little funny thing that happened one day that led to just catapulting me completely out of it. I was just scrolling through Facebook and I came across a professor. Now I don't even remember if she was John Hopkins or Duke University or where she was, but I found this professor and she was talking about genetics and some genetic research, and she was talking about the gene for blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin, and how recent that was. I don't even know where to find her now, but it was this whole lecture series on the Fertile Crescent, humans migrating out of the Fertile Crescent and spreading around the world, and then little things like red hair and blonde hair and white skin as we migrated further north.
This is what I was waiting on. This was the nugget of information I was waiting on. I was waiting to hear something about genetics, because genetics is actually what's pulling people away from a lot of religious doctrine, especially the cult-like type religion. Now, I'm not against religion per se. I believe religion is a great thing. It's a vehicle, it's a vehicle. Everybody can get in, you can get in. It'll help you get to understanding what the God really represent, but I believe we need to sprinkle a lot of DNA and genetics into what religion is at this point. Because, from my understanding, religion, a lot of the commandments, it don't tell you to, it's talking about being good. If you never heard that you shouldn't do certain things, now you see it, you can read it. And that makes sense to me, but, so many stories in there in the Bible and in all these religious books that don't address the science now that we have. We have access. God invented science too. God invented everything, right? So we got to understand that we can learn about human evolution and genetics, and we can learn about that, and we can incorporate that right in within what religion or book that Bible or whatever you was taught from, and you can incorporate that into it and say, okay, this right here, Adam and Eve, that's them finding mitochondrial Eve. If y'all haven't heard of mitochondrial Eve, that's the mother we all originated from. They actually have DNA evidence, and she probably about to speak on that too.
And I had this moment of shock realizing, oh, we didn't start as white children of a white God in the Garden of Eden. Humans actually started in this specific place, and we were always brown. And what I am is a brand new mutation. In that moment, at age 48 years old, I realized that everything that I had been taught my whole entire life was a lie. And I had to learn to walk sideways. And here I am. Thanks for watching.
Wow, that's crazy. That is so crazy. That me and her had the same, realization. She was on one end of it. I was on the other end of it. I always equate, my journey of finding these facts out is like the movie Unbreakable with Samuel L. Jackson. He was doing a bunch of heinous crimes to find Bruce Willis in that movie. But I look at the analogy is the Bruce Willis was the proof that all the stuff he was doing was for something, right? So, but in the real world, it's actually Bruce Willis actually represent the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like me finding out these things, and I always searched, and was listening before the internet, listening to certain hip hop. Wu-Tang Clan used to drop certain jewels, and I would listen to them. And certain Farrakhan, I grew up listening to to the Nation of Islam, and a lot of that stuff I couldn't really get into either because they wasn't speaking about facts. They was just speaking about theories and things that they thought, and a lot of them theories are false now, I understand, but it still was something to lead me to try to find the truth. So once genetics came out, the DNA, and we were able to, definitively know exactly where we originate from, it liberated me. And so this lady had the same liberation. It probably was the same year. We probably seen the same geneticists. And so, yeah, it don't matter who the person was, but we both were enlightened. And that's the thing. That's why I wanted to share this video, y'all. Look, stay tuned. Marlon Speaks Live. I'll be back later. One.